Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about winning the different catering segments. And guys, this is going to be a good one. I'm really, really excited about the lineup that we have, the discussions that we're going to have, and we're really going to get into it. My name is Brett Jones. I am the Chief Product Officer here at Lunchbox. So thanks for having me. This is the first webinar that I've done here at Lunchbox. So I'm tagging in for Nabil, and so please be kind to me. And if I say something stupid, just send me an email and let me know so I can get better at it. So we're going to be talking about the different catering segments, and we're going to be going through that. We're going to be exploring how to develop and grow your catering business by effectively targeting and winning across different segments. So obviously our agenda, we'll do state of catering, different segments, understanding the target markets, sports, catering, B2B, events, how to market and sell at scale, and building relationships in the segments. So let me introduce our amazing panelist. So we will go, we'll do ladies first. So first, let me introduce Kelly Grogan, who I've had the fortunate pleasure of working with on a couple of different projects from CRUMBS, catering expert, and often sets me correct in the catering world. So welcome, Kelly.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. We're excited to have you. Then we have Sabrina Jenkins, the Director of Catering at PDQ. And in the couple of conversations we've had recently, very, very enlightening, and I'm super excited to get to talk to you more today. Welcome, Sabrina.
Awesome. Thank you. Happy to be here.
And the man that needs very little introduction, Erle Daridick, Senior Partner at OPGA, obviously been around the block a time or two in the catering space. So thank you so much for your time, Erle. Appreciate it.
Excellent, Brett. Looking forward to today.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to start off with a quick icebreaker. So I'm going to ask the team, and I'll actually start off. So the question here is, what's the most memorable catering event you've ever been involved with? And since, I don't, have a extensive background in catering, I will start because I was a novice a couple of years ago. My parents celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, and my sister and I decided to throw a surprise vow renewal ceremony for them. So they walk in and 400 of their closest friends and family are there, walk up to the stage, renew their vows. It was a really neat thing. But we had to cater it, my sister and I. So instead of probably going through the proper chains, we just knew a friend of a friend that does catering, got a quote, yeah, that sounds good, let's do that. And then as we got closer to the event, we realized we hadn't heard from the caterer for like 2-3 weeks, and it was silence, and they ghosted us basically until we got and so we started freaking out and looking at other options and things like that. And finally, as we got closer to the event, heard back from them, and luckily everything went without a hitch, but it was terrifying to think that we could embarrass our parents in front of like 400 of their friends. So that's my most memorable. I'll never forget that. So does anybody else have one?
I can say I've got one. I definitely, I think unfortunately the pandemic was pretty memorable for all of us. And if anybody was in the catering side of things during that time, it was definitely a very sort of lights off moment, right? And so we were trying to do everything that we could with the organization that I was with to find those catering orders. And we're going to talk about it a little bit later today. But the big thing was looking in the community and saying, okay, well, who is open? Where are people still gathering? What is still continuing to happen? And we ended up booking 2 weeks of daily box lunches for the local YMCA, where we were helping kids make pizzas 6 feet apart inside the middle of the woods. The photos from it are unbelievable. I'm sure the health department would hate me, but it was an amazing experience making the best of the worst situation. But gosh, I've got great photos stretching out pizza and making pizzas in the woods for all the kids to take home later that night. And so it was awesome.
Nice.
I love it. I also love hearing just in general, I love hearing stories about how creative everybody had to get during the pandemic to make sure that the lights were on. So I love it. Anybody else have one? Or if not, we can move on.
Yeah, I've got a quick one. I mean, we've definitely expanded our outreach and gone from anywhere from two 20-box lunches to, now we're pumping out 2,000-box lunches. So I think that was a pretty surreal moment for us, and we've got some other ones on the pipeline that are, upwards in the thousands, where we have to break it out into multiple locations just to be able to execute it. So, when you take a step back and you look at like where you started and then where you've come, it's pretty surreal.
I absolutely love it. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and move on to our first like official slide. So this slide is on state of catering. This topic, really just the general state of catering in general. I'm going to start. I'll just list a couple of these. So 23% is the percentage of consumers working remotely daily, which is dropping from 26% in 2022. A natural inclination, people are going back into the offices. As a result, and this segues nicely into that, 8.8% workplace office catering segment is anticipated to grow 8.8% from 2023 to 2030. It makes complete sense. So let's jump into here. This question is really let's start with Sabrina. So what segments are you seeing the most growth in this year, like 2024?
We put a lot of emphasis on our sports sector, schools, summer camps was a huge focus coming off of the summer months. I think with the help of our sales team that we brought on board, it just really opened up a lot of doors and being able to expand our reach.
I love it. Anybody else Kelly or Erle, what segments are you seeing the most growth in?
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm talking to operators every day, and I am definitely seeing the lunch business pick back up. There's this, whole conversation around food at work. Easy Cater's been really leading the charge on that in our industry. We're going to talk about some of those channels today, I think. And I'm seeing operators who are investing in direct sales are getting all kinds of things, including, event catering is coming across their desk. They've got their usual sort of drop off, and then there's this sort of need to feed their workers every day, that kind of thing. So I'm seeing all of it. I don't know, Kelly, what about you?
I'm definitely seeing it. And Sabrina, I think you nailed it, especially on the school side of things. The pandemic really impacted a lot of cafeterias and those private lunch spaces, and being able to provide meals to not only students, but you think about senior citizen homes, as well as those cafeterias inside of office buildings. And so they're looking for alternatives, and they're looking for those reliable partners that they can sort of set it and forget it and have those lunches coming in. So I think those segments are all really expanding. But Erle, to your point, it's about getting creative. Those orders and those needs are out there, and sort of getting, the industry educated around that is going to be massive.
Love it. And the follow-up question to that really is, and let me start with Erle on this one. So what can restaurants do to prepare for increased demand or a new revenue stream such as catering?
Yeah, it's a big question, Brett, and I think it's really important. And I do believe our industry is starting to appreciate the complexity of what the business-to-business channel offers. The conversation and context of what it is we're trying to attack here is really how brands develop relationships with organizations within their communities. And this is really the exercise. And that we call it catering, but it's really more than that. It's really just about figuring out programmatically. We do it through menus and we do it through services in terms of differentiation to figure out what are the different services, options, and different products that we can create for our business-to-business community. And that's a giant conversation, and I hope we get into it today a little deeper.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for the answers. Pretty enlightening. Let's move on and really dive into the different segments. So, there's probably a million different technical segments, but let's just focus on small local businesses, corporate offices, schools, universities, contract catering. So that being said, obviously, catering is not one size fits all. Each segment has its own unique characteristics. Sabrina, going back to you, should these differences be considering when building out your catering strategy? I would have to think the answer is yes, but I'm throwing
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Each group is going to have different needs. It may be a completely different, I call it marketing group, but you know, whether you're dealing with a doctor's office or a pharmaceutical rep, even those two things could be slightly different. You know, whether you're dealing with the person that's placing the order or the office placing it on their behalf. And then going into obviously, you know, the bigger leagues with the major league partnerships and things like that. They're just completely different animals. You know, you're feeding multiple people versus maybe an office of 8 or 10. So being able to work with their budgets and accommodate those needs, I think is a huge part of it. And Erle just hit the nail on the head in the last part of it. It's all in the relationship building, you know, being able to have that conversation, understand what they need.
No, I agree. And Kelly, let me ask you, like how important is it specifically to like tailor your approach when targeting the different segments?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about catering, right, I think the number one lesson, and Erle, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you can't just take your standard in-house restaurant menu and call it a catering menu. And so when you look at that and you look at the different segments that were just 4 of the many segments that are out there, you can't just take your standard catering menu and force it to fit all of these different segments. If you really want to win in these different segments, you have to approach each one differently using your catering menu, but figuring out what the needs are of that specific group. And we're going to talk about sports here in a second, but really customizing to fit their problems and helping them solve that. By just handing them their catering menu and saying, you know, pick it and order it and, you know, tell me what you need, they get stuck and they get frazzled and they're like, this is too much work. But if you can help lead them to the water on it, trust me, it'll be a lot much easier to get the catering orders from them.
Yeah, and Kelly, just to riff off that for a second, I think this is really important as we go deeper, is that each one of these sub-channels under the business-to-business transaction, under catering, is different. The characteristics are different. The reasons to purchase are different. The anxiety and stress associated is different. Okay, what is the same and what is consistent across these things is the business-to-business relationship. So when we get into the technology conversation, which is going to happen at some point in this webinar, is the actual technology itself that supports the business-to-business transaction is the same. The differentiation between the channels is the subtlety. And so, for example, if you want to get into the event catering business, you might do packages, as an example. If you want to be in the school and university business, that's typically done on a calendar rotation. And so what you're doing is you're doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday menus, okay, as opposed to just drop off. Those are some of the subtleties, Brett. Not sure if that helps, but just some ideas.
No, that's something I'm not sure I've thought about how you would have like a weekly rotation like that in that segment. So that makes a lot of sense. Let's move on to the next question because we really got a lot to get through. Good discussion so far. This one's really, so I'm a brand and I'm trying to identify what is the target market that I go after specifically to catering. So let's delve into that and figure out what markets are right for the right businesses. Kelly, let me ask you a question. So how do you go about identifying a brand's right target market?
Yeah, it starts with, I think, understanding your community. You know, every restaurant is in a different market for a different reason and has different offerings. And so you need to really know and understand what lives within that 5, 10, 15-mile radius of your location. So starting with that research, that's going to give you what the opportunities are. But then you need to back your way into it with your menu. And if you are a menu that is, you know, ice cream, for example, it's going to be really tough to nail boxed lunches when going out to a sports team. But you can position it in a way where you can still talk to sports teams, but maybe you're talking about end of the year celebrations or athlete of the week, or, you know, looking at those very specific things. And so taking the time to, again, understand your local community, who can you see from your doorstep, and then figuring out how your menu is going to solve their different needs is going to be critical about deciding who to go after. I think the other important thing is there are so many different opportunities and it can get really overwhelming. And so really taking the time to build out a plan, and I don't want to jump ahead, but like building out that plan and understanding how you're going to strategically go after those segments is going to be important on how you win in that segment. It's not something where you send one, usually not. It's not something where you send one email and all of a sudden you've captured every school in your local community. But if you decide that that's going to be your focus for the month of September is, man, I want to have a conversation with every local school, and here's what I'm going to be talking to them about, and here's what my offerings are going to be, and being very specialized on that, that's going to help you organize your thoughts and win in that category so that it will continue to repeat. And then the next month you can look at a different category. It takes time to get into these different markets.
Yeah, great points, Kelly. You know what, the other thing I'll add, I mean, I think the question you're asking here, Brett, is like, how does a brand identify how to attack this market and this business? And I would say to everybody listening that a lot of this depends on where you are in your catering journey, okay? Mm-hmm. Some of this is lower hanging fruit, and some of this is a little more complex in terms of execution. And so I would say to brands who have maximized their, business to business lunch catering business, and they're busy and it's flowing, they could look at the next segment. They could look at an event business. But what's important to know is if you're going to go to the event business, is to understand that's a different business. And each one of these decisions, although it's subtle, has an impact on the operations. And so catering is an execution-based problem. We can sell all day long. Selling is easy. Sending out quotes, proposals, contracts, taking deposits. That's all the easy stuff. The hard part is actually making the food, getting it there on time, meeting the client expectations. And so each time you go into one of these channels or these sub-channels, it's really, really important that you make sure that your brand can execute, okay? If you're just starting your journey, you want to start on the easy stuff, the low-hanging stuff. Maybe Sabrina can speak more to that. I mean, PDQ's done an incredible job. Sabrina, maybe you have some ideas on that one.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and we do the same, even being multiple units, you kind of, take bite-sized pieces and work your way into the bigger accounts. And I think that's where we found our success was, working with our bread and butter, so to speak, your day-to-day. Those are your, pharmaceutical reps, your doctor's offices, your B2Bs, and then seeing how we can expand that into bigger fish, and then that's where you really kind of focus your attention towards coming off of summer, for example, turning off all the other noise and just focusing on school, just focusing on summer camps. Make that the initiative. Get the whole brand behind it. And then once that season passes, you move into the next, now coming into fall. Let's look at football. Let's look at Thanksgiving. What other opportunities are coming ahead?
Yeah. And also in addition to that, Sabrina, I think not just the events and the dates and celebrations and all that, but I think, essentially, when brands step back and look at the opportunity, what they need to do is really assess, to Kelly's point, what's happening in the community. And I think that's critical. I would not encourage brands to just jump into the event catering business without really thinking about it.
This is
definitely a lot of facets there you have to be ready for.
Yeah, alcohol, labor.
Well, I was going to say, Sabrina, when I think about, I'm sure everybody on this webinar, including myself, would love a 2,000 box lunch order. That's a different type of execution. And that required, I can only imagine, how many meetings ahead of time, ordering appropriately, having the packaging, what do the individual meals go inside of, what time are we delivering it? And so it's one of those things. You may go out and start asking for the business, but when you get that $2,000 order, you got to execute it correctly, because man, that's an easy one to mess up if you're not setting up correctly from the beginning.
Right. Refrigeration, for example.
Absolutely.
Refrigeration is a big deal.
Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of curating that goes behind it. Any off-premise event, you really have to look at your people, your products, and your place, and be able to say, am I ready for this? Because you're absolutely right. The last thing you want to do is drop the ball for 2,000 people and leave them hungry and disappointed. So,
no, I love it. So it sounds like it's a healthy mix. If I'm a brand trying to identify where we get into, it's a healthy mix of what can we handle operationally, what does our local community need, and where is there available market for that, and then essentially what our menu looks like, and what's a easy fit there. So the kind of those three things, and taking a healthy balance of those three things into consideration. But I can see it going vastly awry if only two of those three things are considered, and somebody just jumps in and says, "We're doing catering now, let's go." So would you all agree with that? Is that a fair summary of what we just discussed?
Yeah, 100%. You're not going to go out there with your most intricate, hard to execute item on the menu. That's for sure.
That sounds like
Keep
a challenge.
It simple.
Don't threaten me with a good time. I'll try it. All right, so let's move on to the next one here. So let's start with, as we get into the actual segments themselves, winning sports catering, right? So sports catering is rapidly growing right now, but it's got its unique challenges and opportunities. So Sabrina, PDQ's seen quite a bit of success in the sports segment. Can you kind of walk us through like how you started winning there?
Absolutely. Yeah, it started kind of from base zero. You gotta work your way in, get the relationships going, build their trust. That's huge. And then be able to acquire those orders. And then from there, it kind of becomes a referral basis, but it's a whole nother beast, like we were talking about. These are much larger orders a lot of the time. But it can expand beyond just feeding the audience. A lot of the time, we're catering to professional athletes, or, they may even be collegiate athletes, right down to the youth. We do youth box lunches. So being able to hit all of those tiers, and meet their needs, they're all completely different. The packaging may be a little bit different. The price point is potentially very different. So knowing how to work your way through those relationships, I think, is huge. And we've even seen the success of, feeding the camera crew or the staff and things like that for these teams as well. So now we've expanded beyond just focusing on the players or the team itself, but the organization as a whole. And then being able to go in there and see where we can, fill a need, really. So.
Hey, Sabrina, quick question. Are you working off a list of some sort? How are you finding these accounts or these prospects, and what are you doing to get them?
Great question.
Yeah. So we've been, building our database, I would say, for several years. The relationships play a big role in it. Being able to gain the referrals, again, going back to the trust. Once we've had a very successful order with one team, that spreads into their opposing team, and that goes into not even just the major leagues. We're dealing with our college teams or the local universities. A lot of the time they're leaning on the team they're playing for, well, where do you get your food from? And because we've done such a great job at executing at that level, PDQ's the first thing off the tongue. So that's kind of helped us be able to keep building that rapport and gaining more and more. And then just building those connections. And I know we'll get into this later with, how we've incorporated a sales team, but it really helps to kind of be able to branch out and just keep spreading our wings that way.
Are you doing any sampling at all when you call on these accounts?
Yeah.
Like, do you make
actually, we have acquired, and that even goes beyond like the athletes and dealing with the major league teams, but being able to set up a simple food show, and bring some samples from the menu, that works great with B2Bs too, or big corporations you're trying to get your foot in the door. I've seen a lot of success with that, where I targeted an office that had 400 people, and I wanted to be able to see how I could get our food in front of them, set up a small meeting, bring some samples, and the food speaks for itself. That's what I say. Food is your best marketing tool for sure.
Sampling sells when it comes to catering. Hey, question for you, Sabrina. Just in the old days, we used to, I think it's different today. Like, it's hard to access buildings. People don't answer their phones anymore. You used to be able to walk into buildings. You can't do that anymore. There was a time I remember where you could call property managers and you could organize like feed the building kind of day, which was to invite the tenants down to feed them and sell catering that way. Is that still happening?
Yeah, we haven't seen as much of that, but that's like a great point. There's, opportunity is everywhere. So, we do some grassroots marketing. We'll do some sales blitz and we go out and, beat the streets. Right now it's been a little hot, but, we'll get out there, and our team loves sharing all of their wins and opportunities. We have like a separate channel where we just kind of share all of our like hoorahs and like, look at this order we did, or we dropped off cookies here. So that builds a lot of it, but kind of going back to the sports catering, a lot of the athletes are eating more than the average human. So we had to look at that and really menu engineer a specific package that would be able to accommodate them, that we don't offer to just the masses and throw it up on our website. So that really opens up the relationship and being able to have the conversation with them, find out their budget, how many people do you have. There's a lot of dietary restrictions when you're dealing with athletes. So, you have to take all of those factors into play when you're getting into this space.
Love it. No, that's, and it sounds to me like this is one of the most unique segments that we have. One kind of final question on the sports segment is, what is, just quickly, like one key, like massive important difference between sports and the other segments? And what's one thing that is just the same, not different at all, from your perspective, Sabrina?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest differences for sure is I like to use the term like white glove, these relationships and these orders, we have some fantastic delivery partners, but these are much bigger accounts that a lot of the time you have to take the onus from start to finish, be the face, and be able to follow through with the full delivery. A lot of them require setup and serve or different. They can all be very different. So, there's temping involved, or they're jumping on an airplane. So being able to pivot and go wherever they're going and say, well, we got you there, or right, maybe we can't do that specifically, but this is another viable option that I have. So you have to also be honest with the guest too, because there's a lot of asks, but you have to make sure that, to Kelly's point, that you're going to be able to fulfill that and meet their expectations. So these are, they're much bigger players. So there's a lot of.
Hey, Brett, just to chime in on that one. So I think, look, what's different is the menu, the experience. The whole process is different. We can see that. But what's the same is the billing, the order entry, the billing, the collections is all the same. And so that's the business to business technology requirements, right? Which is that order management systems need to have this business to business functionality to be able to make sure that they can handle the organization itself. I'm not sure if that's helpful or not, but
very, very much so.
No, absolutely. I would say that's probably the only similarity that, right, is the finishing of the books. And I know we'll touch on technology, but that plays a big part in these bigger accounts. If you're really going to try to go after it, you have to have the ability to quote. You need to be able to run through. It's a lot of back and forth that's involved. It's not just a one and done, like, hey, I got an order for you. Okay, great. Here you go. Or go online and you can place that, 500 person order. It's not always that easy.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to B2B. Let's have a quick discussion here, winning B2B catering, right? So obviously the B2B segment, it's a staple in the catering industry, but like every other segment comes with its own demands. So Erle, for you, like what makes B2B catering unique? And a similar question as the last one, like what's the make or break factors?
Yeah. Well, again, this is relationship-based selling and service to organizations within our communities. The B2B catering segment is a big word because it covers off events and everything else. So I would more look at it as, what does the business to business drop-off business look like? I think that's the lowest hanging fruit. Those are large value orders that essentially come in. We make them. They might get picked up by a third party delivery partner. You might take them on your own. You drop them on the boardroom table and you're done. Okay, so those are what I would call the low-hanging fruit. And there are segments in that. There are categories. Some people specialize in lunch, for example. We know EasyCater provided us amazing data in the recent months. And, sandwiches are the number one seller when it comes to drop-off catering. So if you're in a brand that does not have a sandwich program, that's something to think about, is how do you create a sandwich program that's different than what you might have on your in-store menu, same flavor profile, using the brand's, guidelines, but creating something that's different, that's a handheld vessel of some sort. We know that handheld vessels sell well when it comes to lunch catering. Once you've maximized that channel where like your stores are busy, you're doing lots of lunch deliveries, then you can start looking at breakfast. Okay. You can look at the snack part of the day. You can also look at hors d'oeuvres, which are drop off. There's lots of like law firms, insurance firms, places that are having like cocktail parties at the end of their day. Again, you can sell things by the dozen. You can drop them off in boxes. You can drop it off with some alcohol, with some beverages. And, there's no service involved. There's none of that. And then what you can do, as Sabrina said, is you can upscale those services. So if you want to add a white glove service by having somebody stand there for setting up and cleanup, you can do that. Okay. So I would say like there's these opportunities within what I'm talking about there, which I would primarily call the drop-off business. You might want to upscale it with some white glove service, but it's not the event business. That's different. Okay. So maybe that gives some good guidance for, more conversation around the B2B catering opportunity.
No, I completely agree there. And I want to ask too, like Kelly, I want to go back to you. So like key expectations of B2B clients, and how businesses can meet them. I feel like you'd have an interesting insight here.
Yeah, I would say there's two very important things. It's get it there on time and get it there accurately. If you can't execute on either end of that, you are wasting your time going out and trying to get new business. You should be able to nail those two parts of the business. When you look at getting it there on time, we know there's shortages inside the restaurant, and you can't necessarily send out a manager, or you can't take it yourself. And so make sure you're not relying on a third-party partner that's not reliable. Take the time to build a relationship with that company. There's a bunch that are out there, but build a relationship with them and build a relationship with the driver. So they're taking ownership of connecting the dots when they leave that food. We all know what happens. The second it's out of the restaurant, it's out of your hands. And so you really need to make sure that when it does arrive there, after using a great driver for it, it's got everything that customer needs. And so if you say you include plates, napkins, and serving utensils, make sure there's enough in there. If you say you can get dressing on the side with it, did you double check that all the dressings were in there before they go out of there? And so having systems in place, and Sabrina, I don't know if you have this, but when an order comes in, what is that order checklist before it leaves the restaurant? And that's both specific to the order, but also specific on the branding side of things. Do you have marketing materials in there? Is it a handwritten thank you card, right? Connecting and building that relationship so they continue to know that you appreciate their business. Is it, including a trash bag that they can put everything in? Whatever it is, make sure that those orders are going out accurately. Because I think the other important thing is we talk about those reoccurring business orders that can come in from this, is that you want the experience to be the same every single time they order. Because if one time they get extra cookies with it and the next time they don't because somebody didn't have the portioning correct, becomes a huge dissatisfier, right? And so you really want to prioritize those. Sabrina, do you use anything like checklists for when orders are leaving the restaurant?
Yeah, definitely. Our stores definitely rely on the orders popping up into their KDS, the kitchen display. But prior to that, and that's for the on-the-fly catering orders. We've tried to allow for a smaller window, which does open up other opportunities as well, and brands should consider that too. If you have the flexibility to be able to accommodate an order within a short amount of time, you will open up a lot more doors. But being able to work off production sheets or checklists, pack slips, I know there's different terms for all of them, but yeah, having all of your checks and balances for sure, because you're absolutely right. Once it leaves the restaurant, it's the biggest. I always call it like, gotta put out a fire if we get a call and there's, my cookies are missing or all the tenders aren't here. And, maybe it was just a slip up on the driver or we missed it on our side. So we try to avoid as many of those slip ups as possible.
Yeah, I think the reliability on it is key. And if you've ever hosted an event for something, Brett, obviously you went through this stress. It's stressful, right? There's nothing worse than standing in front of a room of hungry individuals being like, my food's not here, or having to tell the CEO that his lunch wasn't included in the bag. And so that not only accuracy, but getting it there on time, those are the most critical thing. Everything else, right? The marketing strategies, those different segments, all of that other stuff will come with it, but you have to start by executing correctly first.
For sure. Yeah. And the packaging, I think, plays a really pivotal role in it as well. Making sure that you have, a vessel that's going to allow your food to travel well, depending on if you're serving pasta or you're serving salads, or do you, we're primarily chicken tenders, sandwiches. We always let people know, the fries don't travel as well, but they love them regardless. So making sure that you look at all of that, and then labeling as well. You live and learn. You can't send out a 200-box lunch and maybe it's a variety of different items and there's no labels, and you'll leave the guest to wonder, and now they're popping boxes to figure out what's what. So, having the proper packaging, the marketing, the labels, all of those things in play, it plays a huge part in your success. Yeah.
And I love that. And because it's not like you can just go back around to the drive-through, and get another burger. It's by the time you get the 1,000 chicken tenders back, it's probably too late. Super important. Good advice. I want to go back to something Kelly said, and let's talk about events here. You mentioned delivery, and I think so. Like event catering, it requires a different approach, especially when it comes to like logistics and delivery. So I just kind of want to hone in on the delivery piece for a second. So Kelly, just kind of starting with you this time, like how different is delivery in events catering compared to like other segments?
Yeah, I mean, the events catering, you have to build in the responsibility of the setup side of things. And similar to a checklist for, I think, an order leaving the restaurant, you need your checklist to make sure you've got your tablecloths, your tables, do you have your extension cords, do you have all of those backup things that I think come into these big events side of things. There's a lot more on the line. I will also say that's another very difficult place to stand in front of people and be unprepared and, serving the wrong type of food or, all of those things. I would say the best way to win, sort of this type of segment and things to be aware of is you've got to do a run through on it. You have to think of every single piece of the process. At what time am I doing this? What schedule am I following? Who's responsible for this? And really it's a completely different type of catering that you can win at. But I think as Erle mentioned, different resources go into this. It's a different skill set. It's even different staff within the restaurant. Your regular manager may not know how to appropriately set up a buffet line and which way people should enter from. And of course the plates go first. They don't go at the end of the, those types of things you will unfortunately learn through experience. But you don't want to take that risk, when you're standing in front of a client.
Yeah. The other thing I'll just, say on this one, and Kelly, those are great points, but I would really encourage brands this has to be an intentional decision. I mean, event catering is another business. And I would encourage brands to like start naming this stuff and say like, so I don't know who's on the call today, but if I've got Pancheros as an example, I don't know if they're on the call or not, but if we use that brand, we might want to call it Pancheros Event Catering. Okay. So we know it's the event catering division of Pancheros. And that business itself needs a leader. It needs its own menu. It needs its own contracts. The technology that you use to drive that business requires banquet event orders, contracts. I mean, it just goes on and on. When you're getting to and then you have to decide if you just want to be the caterer or if you want to be in the event management business, because if you're going to be doing florals and rentals and alcohol, like it's a whole thing. The beautiful thing about it is that if you can just focus on the food part of it, then you can make relationships with event coordinators who can go to you. So they handle the event and you just do the food. Okay. There's lots of different combinations of ways of getting into that business, but you do have to do it in a very conscious way.
Well, I want to drill into that just a little bit more, Erle. Like, so clearly every business, unfortunately, is not prepared to get into this particular segment. So if they do, like give me like 2 to 3 things right off the bat I should be prepared for if I say I want to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get into events.
All right. If I'm going to do event catering, I'm going to centralize it in a market. I'm not doing event catering out of every restaurant. If Sabrina's company decides they want to be event caterers, then they should open a separate kitchen to do that. Okay. So different production facility, probably, or could be off one of your restaurants that might be like on the bubble. Like if there's one that's just not doing so well, maybe we can use that as a production facility. But I think ultimately, like once we're in the event business, we got to take it out of the stores. It's just something that's very difficult to duplicate. It's very difficult to scale, and you want to do it on a per market basis. So if you've got 30 restaurants in Dallas as an example, then you might want to open an event catering kitchen. Okay, so that's an example of something that you can expect.
For sure. And I'll just piggyback on that really quickly. That same can be said for a lot of our sports partnerships. You have to have your aces in your places. That's kind of always been my go-to. Knowing which location it's coming out of is huge, to Kelly's point, like what people are going to be at this event. You definitely don't want to send somebody that's shy and timid out to go serve a very excited crowd for your brand. You have to have the energy, the excitement, to be there, and then be able to also have the logistics in place to execute it. I think to Erle's point too, having partners in crime, you don't want to necessarily try to take on the world and be doing linens and all kinds of things. Focus on what you do best, which is your food, your brand, and then allow the other brands that are great at event catering or planning and things like that to focus on that. And then you team up and you create a wonderful experience for your guests together.
Yeah. And also, Brett, remember, we're primarily restaurants. I mean, restaurants have a very specific challenge that caterers don't have. And that challenge is we have to run our restaurants, So, I think we just need to be cautious. We need to be careful. We need to be thoughtful when we go into these businesses, if you will. The conversation around incremental sales around the B2B channel has always been the conversation around restaurants, at least in early days. If you roll back the clock 15, 20 years, there was a handful of brands that understood catering, and that was people like Boston Market. Jason's Deli was early in the process. Corner Bakery was early in the process. Panera Breads was the first major brand to break $1 billion in catering sales. But their business was not event catering. Their business was primarily corporate drop-off business. That's how they built it. Now they have an opportunity. If they want more growth in catering, they're starting to look at those opportunities. Can Panera have an event catering business? If they wanted to, they could. What would that mean? That could mean that they could cater to a stadium full of people. Why can't they? Okay, if they had the right production facility. And then they start getting into partnerships with arenas and stadiums and all kinds of things. It's a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Love
we
it.
have a food truck that's kind of a hub that to Earl's point, we keep it centralized around our cluster stores so it can be used between multiple locations, but we also a lot of the time will throttle that business to maybe a store that is lower volume, and they need the extra sales. This is just a whole, if we can't get the guests to come in the door, we'll go to them. And it's great that we have the ability, especially going into fall and the holiday season, to have, that satellite location on wheels that can go around. And I know that's a whole separate part of the business. Getting into that involves a lot of curating as well and planning and logistics. But It is a great, additional revenue stream you can open up.
Yeah, and there are brands, Brett, that have done it well. For example, if you look at like Wolfgang Puck, it's a good example, right? Started off in the restaurant space, blew out a huge food manufacturing business, blew out a huge event business. Wolfgang Puck Event Catering is what it's called. It's not by accident. It's massive, okay? And so that's an example where they started in restaurants, built the brand, and they pivoted back into these segments early, and they've been doing it for many, many years now.
Love it. No, this is good. I want to move on to a segment of the call of the webinar that I like to call Brett Asks a Really Stupid Question. So this goes to Kelly, and this question is marketing important to catering, and why? I said it was a stupid question.
It is, there are no so stupid questions, Brett.
Except for that one, Brett.
When, when you think about the marketing side of things, right? I think back to before, delivery was the thing, right? Before, DoorDash and Uber Eats and all those other companies were a thing, we didn't talk about delivery. And then as soon as it started to become a thing, all of our advertising and marketing went to pushing delivery and promoting it and talking about it. Well, if you want catering to be a thing, you need to talk about it. You need to educate about it. You need to make sure that a customer knows that you offer all of these things. And gosh, when I think back to when we were just talking about the sports side of things, and Sabrina, you were listing off all of those different important segments to catering to sports teams. How does somebody know that you do that if they don't have a Sabrina sitting there waiting to answer the phone? And so when you talk about marketing, you need to have those marketing materials available. You need to use your website to educate, right? We know guests don't want to waste time looking for information or trying to submit an inquiry and then nobody calls them back, or they want satisfaction immediately. So if you are not giving them all of the information they need to be able to say, oh, I didn't know PDQ has a sports program, and here's what's in, this is perfect for me, right? Then they're that much closer to placing an order with you. So you have to be marketing and talking about it. It starts in your four walls, right? Maximize, that is your biggest advertising and your most expensive advertising is your, whether you own the space or you're leasing it, that is your most expensive marketing channel. So maximize it. Every wall, every door, every order leaving it. You want to make sure catering is everywhere.
Yeah, great stuff, Kelly. And Brett, I would say also, go ahead.
I was going to say, but make sure if you're going to market catering, make sure you have a way for guests to easily place an order for catering. And whether that's directing them to, a third-party site, it's directing them to somebody like a Sabrina, you want a guest to be able to place a catering order with you. And I would say my number one challenge for everybody on the call today is go place a catering order on your own website and go through the experience to identify where somebody may be getting stuck. You will be shocked at some of the things that you find. But your website is going to be your second most powerful marketing channel, right? Make sure everything's on there, but make sure a guest can place an order on there and get everything they need. Sorry, Erle.
That's okay. Hey, marketing is big, of course, always, right? But I would say direct sales are bigger. Okay, so there's a difference between sales and marketing, and a lot of people don't understand that. Active selling is really the way forward. And I would recommend to brands a few things. Number one, get up in your store, put up in your stores, your deliveries today. That's marketing. Okay. Get on the floor, get your manager to get out there, shake hands, get business cards, get them into the database, send samples, that's selling. Okay. As an example of some differences. And I would say, catering rewards are huge in this thing. And our industry is behind on this. At least on first-party transactions. And I would recommend everybody on this call reach out to Preet Saini. He's at Catering Rewards. He's a McAllister's Deli franchisee, and he's cracked the code, okay? He figured out a way to be able to convert third-party catering transactions into first-party. His data is amazing. Go check it out. That's an example of where you can get into marketing, okay? Catering rewards are big.
That's good. That's good to know. We're hearing a lot more about the reward side on catering and how it even how it can translate between the segments. Let's jump into features, right? This is the part I get excited about, the most excited. Granted, I've just had a crash course and a college education in catering, so I appreciate everybody's insight so far. It's been extremely enlightening. Let's talk about features. So order management features. Obviously, from my perspective, we've heard the most buzz from our customers around simple features that make an impact on their day-to-day operations. Like for example, in cities, being able to transfer orders from a super busy location that gets a $10,000 order to 2 blocks away to a location that doesn't have as much business, but they still have the capacity in the kitchen, the ability to edit orders, the ability to send quotes out to multiple people. We're seeing a lot of those types of requests. So this is the part that I'm excited to hear you guys' answers. What are some must-haves whenever it comes to catering features? Let's start with Kelly.
Yeah. And again, I can't recommend it enough. Go to your website, go to your EasyCater and try to place a catering order to see what you're currently missing from this. It's got to be easy for the guests to be able to place their order, right? The website, yes, it exists to help the operations team get those orders in, get them, working on the back end and have all that data. But you need to have customers placing orders for that to become of value. And if a guest can't place the order, then obviously there's no data. So we're on catering sites all the time trying to help operators place orders. And so when you look at less clicks, right? How many options do I need to have to be able to place the order to get all the way through to my checkout? How many times do I get kicked out and have to get logged back in? And I would say the most frustrating one for me is getting all the way to the end and then being told, sorry, we can't deliver for that delivery time, or we can't deliver to that address. It is, just the most frustrating, and you lose customers because of it. Because if it's hard to place the order, then they'll just go to the next one, or they'll go to a marketplace. They'll go somewhere else for it. So for me, it's, can you edit the order? Can you get it delivered and get through the process? And is it easy to use?
Yeah. I know we're getting close on time, but I'll just real quick chime in. We've over the years evolved quite a bit to fine tune your systems. You have to look like exactly what Kelly was saying. We went in, you got to place an order just like your guests are. Are there any pain points? Is it mobile friendly, especially in today's day? Everything should be, at their fingertips. And can they get in and out within multiple, let's say 1, 2, 3 clicks in some cases? So we've really engineered our menu to make it easier, less modifiers, things like that, because that's just more clicks, more time, more thinking for the guest, and then they get frustrated and burn out, and absolutely they may jump somewhere else if they get all the way to the end and it says no delivery couriers available. That's very frustrating. So definitely being able to look at your tech stack and see where you can tune it, tweak it, make it more user friendly will for sure keep people first party ordering. And then the loyalty part is huge. That's been a game changer for our brand. I know a lot of, I think it came up in the questions. A lot of our guests have expressed that to us directly as well, that, they go to third party sites because of the rewards and the perks that are there. So we were like, well, let's one up them. And, we turned on loyalty, and, we have some really great perks, for our catering channel specifically. And then also for just our regular dine-in, drive-through, and online orders. So. And
Erle, I'm coming to you, but I want to switch the question just real quick in the interest of time. If we go to the next slide. So obviously folks are somewhat new to catering. They're obviously used to the general technology around third party, first party. So that being said, what are some key differences that we see in technology that you should expect to see in technology whenever moving from third party, first party into actual catering?
Yeah, well, I think it's a big question, Brett. Here's the thing, okay, is that we're doing a workshop in Denver on October 15th and 16th. It's all about this, okay? This is the whole workshop, which is the history of technology in the restaurant space has primarily evolved through what was point of sale, was basically the beginning of the process 50 years ago. What's happened since then, those companies got into the kitchens, right? That's what happened. Then you have the digital infrastructure that came along. And so online ordering, and then you have the cloud-based solutions that woke up. And then you have the marketplaces that came all around. That's been the evolution of the last 50 years of technology in our space. And so now you have this ecosystem of complex APIs trying to connect all these pieces. And what needs to happen, and it's happening, is at a strategic level, you somehow have to bring together CRM, accounting, production, CRM, ordering, accounting, production, and delivery. Those are the 4 pieces. And you have to be able to do that in a batch-based manufacturing environment, which is why the point of sale system is difficult to inject orders in there for large-scale catering is so difficult, because point of sale systems are designed on a transaction per transaction basis. Okay. It doesn't look to the future. It doesn't look at bulk orders. Okay. And that's why you have this complexity of what is this catering thing that's surfacing up in restaurants. And restaurants have a particular problem because they have to run their restaurants. Okay. Caterers don't have to do that, nor do commissaries. Okay. And that's why we have this complexity. So the conversation we need to be having, which is basically what are the strategic elements and business workflow that has to happen in terms of the B2B transaction to create a seamless environment where customers, operations, and these companies can have relationships and create these seamless experiences. That's the question. Okay. And look forward to having more of that. We're not going to do it today, but come to Denver. We're going to do it in Denver.
Minute.
Denver.
I want to get to some Q&A. We've only got 4 minutes, so we're going to make this quick. I'm just going to pick the first one that I have. So this is for the group, but let's one person grab it and just run with it. What are your tactics and approach to have a memorable first interaction with a potential guest? I find I have to reach out multiple times to get an initial order because they forget about my company, which uses a lot more labor to get that initial order. Really good question. Who wants it?
I can take it. And I think Erle can attest to this, that there is a certain number of touch points that it takes in order to get somebody to place a catering order with you. It's really tough to, pick up the phone and call somebody and have them say, gosh, I was waiting for you to call me. I had to place a catering order and today was the day. That rarely happens. And so it does take time to build relationships with these individuals. And so that's important to have a plan, right? To work with those and follow up on those relationships so that when they do have a catering order, you are top of mind with them. And I think with that, having a great CRM system can help you do this. It can help you stay organized. It can help you say, these are the people I need to be following up with in October. These are the people that said they would have an order for me in December, and having that appropriately organized so you can maximize your time. That's how you'll get the order when the time is right, but you can't force them to place it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely real quick. I mean, I call it planting the seeds. Whether you're grassroots marketing, going out there, and I think one of the questions as well was, what do you bring? I never like to walk into a building with just a piece of paper or my business card. That feels like I'm soliciting. I like to feel like I'm coming in there with a solution to a problem they may have, which is to feed them. So being able to, work that in and use cookies or, just a couple little lower cost items is very helpful tools.
Amazing. Guys, I want to thank you so much for your time, Sabrina, Kelly, Erle. I can't speak for anybody that was listening, but personally for me, I found this extremely insightful, illuminating. I feel like I've been talking black holes with Stephen Hawking and just trying to grasp what I can. So I'm going to dig even further into some of these concepts after this call. Thank you. And obviously, we have our panelists' information to reach out to them. And thank you for the audience that's listened. Just some real quick, Lunchbox will be at Prosper Forum, QSR Evolution, FS Tech, Fast Casual Executive Summit. And we will also have the restaurant catering workshop coming up, which hosted by Erle. So we're really excited about all of that. And look, I'm not a sales guy. I'm a product guy. If you need help with your catering, your first party solution, or your web or app, let us know. We would love to give you a demo, talk to you, problem solve, and see what we can do. But I really appreciate everybody's time, and thank you so much. I think that's a wrap. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See ya. Bye.